Hello, everybody. Welcome to Punch Up Pod Sunday evening show, the shit show.
It's all a shit show, really.
It's
But
a shit show. A little hangout time tonight. Thank you for joining us, Pat. How are you? How's your weekend? Look what I get to ask you because we're doing it on a Sunday.
Oh my god, that's too personal, Lila. I don't want to talk about it. I have
lots of stuff went down.
nothing exciting to report.
Really?
Don't even have good cat updates.
Nothing.
I mean, what do you want? I played some Jackbox games with some friends.
All right.
Left the house to buy some groceries.
That's
really
fun,
exciting stuff.
Weekend stuff. I like it.
I managed to buy some beer. Go figure.
I just think it's so funny that you ever are close to running out. Like that is my alcohol situation is a staple. I never would let it get even close to running out.
I think it's because I drink IPAs and you can't stock them up because they
really?
expire. You want to drink an IPA within the first 90 days max that it was brewed. So
I didn't know that. But does anything last that long in your place anyway? Like,
I mean, I could stock up for more than just
right. Like I get like a 6-pack of wine a week.
Right.
Just to keep that all going.
Yes. Well, you also have to understand, I could crawl to the bar from here.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
The liquor store. I have a corner store that has the best beer selection in town. Also,
that I'm super jealous of. So. I wish we had that. We don't. I have to drive to get my alcohol. So it's part of the major grocery run every week.
How was your week?
It was good. Thanks for asking. Pat. It was good. Yesterday, Xander went to his senior prom, my younger son, which was really fun because, Asher, my older son, graduated in 2020 and everything shut down in March. So there was no prom, there was no senior, excursion, there was nothing. So
just learning loss.
Just learning loss. That's all there was. Learning loss. Get them kids back into that school. So it was fun. And, I am not a prude. I only preface that. And I mean, you've been in my house. I think you've seen Josh's photography. Whatever. Like I have no problem with nudity or sex or anything. But last year I noticed with people posting their kids' prom pictures, the girls' dresses were seriously like some didn't even cover their whole ass. It was crazy. Like it was so short. All of these girls were wearing the shortest dresses ever. And it just felt like, God, I don't know. Just like wildly inappropriate.
The mystery gone. Will the kid get lucky? He's getting lucky.
Well, and I'm a germaphobe, right? So I'm like, when you're sitting, what do you like?
You would think of that part more than the sex part.
I was like, God, like this, like
the germ part.
The germ part. But anyway, I am happy to report that the style apparently has changed, at least amongst the group. And the dresses were longer. And again, like I mean, whatever. Everybody is beautiful. Bodies are beautiful. I have no problem with any of it. It just felt so strange seeing some of these, 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds with that high of a dress. And, some of them wear that kind of thing to school also. Like, even though there's a uniform, they roll the skirt. It just is crazy to me. But anyway.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. And it's different, as a guy, like it's the women that are all scantily dressed and the young girls are scantily dressed. The guys are just always going to be just in normal suits, not with their ball sack hanging out or some weird thing. It's like I don't want to comment on it for comments being inappropriate. There's no, I don't want to say that's a slutty outfit because that in itself is like,
and again, like I'm not even saying
doing a misogyny.
Not even saying that. Like I don't even care if you like. I'm not that's really not it. It also feels unfair. Like it just puts a young woman's body on display in a way that it might be nice to show up just wearing a suit and not have people be like, really? You think you can wear that with those legs? Or which would have been like what I would be thinking when I was younger, which is gross. But like, anyway, even like kids shorts, like when I was buying shorts for my kids when they were in middle school, the boys shorts were like sports shorts, like get out there and play ball, work hard, run, get strong, build a sweat. And the girl shorts were, again, they were like jean shorts that went like they were even with their crotch. Like it was crazy. Anyway, very happy that we're allowing a little more experimentation with different lengths of dress for those who want, and anybody who wants to wear a short one, that's great also.
And as a guy, I would like the short gym shorts for the men thing. We got to nip that tradition in the bud. The guys are wearing these real short things, and I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to see any man business.
They were all long for the kids, but I hear you.
I keep saying this, but as men, we should fight back on uncomfortable clothes. Like it sucks that women got the heels and now they're trapped into wearing heels all the time, and that's not comfortable.
Right.
But why would we embrace like tight pants and like nix all those? Let's stick to the gray baggy sweats. That's one
for prom.
Not for me. I bet you saw some at prom. I bet they exist.
Yeah. But anyway, it was fun. It was sweet. The kids, I'm sure, all had a good time and drank too much and all that stuff. But so that was nice. Yeah, and that's kind of it. What do you think? I think we should get going, because our goal on our Sunday show, and we're so grateful for all of you for showing up and hanging with us, is an hour and a half, right?
Hour and a half. Like I don't think I mean, we don't want to talk just to talk. I mean,
that's what we're just doing, but
just for we have to kill time in the beginning because people are trickling in.
Exactly.
It's just sort of the way it is. But
all right. So first, as always, we would like to thank, I have to scroll up here, our members. You guys are amazing. We so appreciate your support. Audience clapping. Thank you all so much. It really means a ton to us. So thank you. And I don't know, did you want to start with a cheers or a funny or dive in, or what's your thought?
We can do a cheers. I think we should cheers your alma mater, the kids at your alma mater, and all the people around the world that are actually joining in support.
So I'm sure, and we'll cover it more on Wednesday, but what's happening at Columbia is so exciting for me to see these kids really like forging a community together. Jews, Christians, Muslims, atheists, they are praying together. The Jewish students did a Friday night service. Muslim students who were praying were videotaped by this horrific professor, with like condemnation. Can you imagine? This is what's happening on campus. And so after that video went out, the next day, the students who weren't Muslim and not praying stood around them with blankets up to protect them so that they wouldn't just be broadcast to the world with some disparaging comment. Just a lot of really beautiful solidarity happening there. People were dancing for each other. There was a group of students, and I don't even want to say because I can't remember what their background was, but they were doing a dance just to entertain people. And I don't think they were either one of the two sort of like, major combating, forces in the world. It was like, it wasn't, the Muslim students or the Jewish students. It was some other group who was coming to be part of it and entertain. I don't know. It just feels like a really beautiful show of solidarity.
And they had musicians out there for a while, and then they shut them down with the noise permit. And then, I just like that the activists there are moving around and adapting to whatever the police do. And it's really got an Occupy feel to it right now.
It does.
Seeing that spread to other campuses might be the big move, that we start getting some more action that's just generalized and not necessarily, this is obviously about the Palestinian war,
right?
Palestinian genocide, but young people are the ones feeling most of the effects of these screwed up policies in our country right now.
Yeah.
And they have less to lose by, especially if they're in the college, taking their time.
Although, and I don't know the
Although-
particulars, but a couple of kids at Barnard, which is like the sister school, Columbia College has boys and girls. Barnard's just girls. And, but a couple of those girls were arrested, and then upon returning to campus were barred from coming in until security let them in, and they had 15 minutes to gather their belongings and get out of the dorms.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What?
I mean, but I don't think that's going to be tolerated. I think that's, they're sort of martyrs in the beginning of this movement.
Yeah.
But I think this is just getting started, honestly.
I
think
hope
we'll
so.
be reporting this for a while now.
I think so, and I agree with you that if we could keep this going for all the other things we need in this country, it would be amazing. And we're already 6 months past the time. I mean, we're 75 years and 6 months past this being necessary for what's happening in occupied Palestine. But it's pretty inspiring to see these kids take it on.
Absolutely. So cheers to them.
Cheers to them.
Let's roll a timeline cleanse just to get us in the mood here.
All right.
What do we got? This was just a random mix of stuff I saw.
All right, let's do it.
Already this morning, just flying by like this week. It's Wednesday, right?
I think so.
Hump day.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Hopefully we'll have a dry hump day.
It's not real. Oh.
It involves our intelligence community. Ken, what have you learned, sir? Oh, shit. Fuck. Okay.
Neck surgery, but medical staff remain confident that the veteran will be fit for the Ashes. Payne has a bulging disc that has been that's a funny one, has been causing him pain. I'm going to throw to you very quickly, Michael.
Bulging what?
Disc.
Disc.
I said disc.
That's what I thought you said. Thank you, Tony.
I'm just going to drink water.
Mate, over to you.
Hi, mate.
Closing on the really highbrow here.
You're never going to guess who chose this video.
Lila.
Fart jokes always kill. They're just the best.
That little that meme girl does a lot of lifting for no matter what stupid shit I put up. I can cover it up with that at the end.
A great tag at the end. Reflect the Sun. Thank you so much. You're amazing. Thank you. Getting us more members. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's awesome. And I don't know if we actually should mention this or not.
I don't know, but don't you want to like table it before? No, I'm kidding.
No.
What?
I think we're gonna try for all the members to have a Jackbox Games night.
Yeah,
I think that'll be really fun. I'll host it. We'll put it up. We'll broadcast it, and only 10 people can play or so at once. But like everybody can vote, and we can just rotate in people. And I think it'd be a really fun community kind of thing. I love doing it, and I did it, like I said, with so many leftists over the years, and I don't know. We'll have fun. So
that sounds great. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny. It's so gross. Okay, so what we wanted to talk about today, I watched this documentary that I loved. I suggested to Pat. He watched it on a plane, loved it, and we've been talking about it so much. And obviously, it's an hour and a half. Recommend everybody, if you have the opportunity, if you have not watched it yet, to sit down and watch Occupation of the American Mind. It came out about 8 years ago, I think. Narrated by Roger Waters, and with lots of journalists and academics whom you all know and recognize, who basically explain the history not only of the occupation, but the occupation in context of as it started to become televised and they could no longer control what Israel was doing to the communities it was slaughtering, starting in 45 or 47, and even earlier in some cases, going all through to the invasion of Lebanon, how once the invasions and the terror from the Israelis became televised, they had to come up with a way to change the tide of public opinion in the US, or they were going to lose the PR war. So that's what this is all about, is how they came up with this Department of Hasbara.
The Hasbara. And it's about, I think the point is that U.S. foreign policy and how the public in the U.S. looks at this war in Israel was crafted a long time ago. And the manipulation of the media is really what this is about. And we talked about it last week, and I think even the week before.
Yeah.
So Lila did a lot of work and cut down pieces of the video. And
we'll stop and start it because it's about 20 minutes, but there'll be moments, but we'll just kind of start in and comment and see what everybody thinks, right?
I think so, but
yeah,
there's a watch party. We always forget.
We are so fancy. I forget about all the bells and whistles.
Bells and whistles, baby.
Look at that.
All right. I think we should roll. We should roll our video.
Here we go. Starting off.
On July 8, 2014, Israel launched a devastating military attack on the Gaza Strip. Over the course of 51 days, the Israeli military dropped nearly 20,000 tons of explosive on Gaza, a densely populated area the size of Philadelphia, killing over 2,000 Palestinians and wounding tens of thousands more. The overwhelming majority of these casualties were civilians.
This strip of land is being bombarded from the air, sea, and land.
Israel launched at least 160 strikes on the Gaza Strip.
And there's one less hospital in Gaza now. Israel today flattened Wafa Hospital.
The sheer scale of the attack sparked outrage and condemnation around the world.
Israel's month-long pounding of Gaza shocked many people around the world. Mass demonstrations have been held in many of the world's major cities.
But in the United States, the story was different. Polls showed the American people holding firm in their support for Israel.
This is the latest CNN ORC poll of Americans. Shows 57% of those polls say Israel's action in Gaza is justified. 34% say unjustified.
These numbers were striking, but they weren't new. Over the course of a conflict in which Palestinian casualties have far outnumbered Israeli casualties, the American people have consistently shown far more sympathy for Israelis than for Palestinians.
It's very difficult to divorce public opinion on any question from the media coverage that people rely on to form opinions. And I think the most prevalent lesson from looking at the coverage is that the coverage tends to see this conflict from the Israeli side.
Study after study has demonstrated that Israeli perspectives dominate American media coverage. So by far the most common thing we've heard is that everything comes down to Israel's right to defend itself.
Israel is a state that implements its right to defend itself and its citizens.
It is a talking point that is set from the top, and by the top I mean from the highest officials, government officials, who are commenting on this issue, which the media obsessively covers and repeats.
A man's got to do what a man's got to do, and you'd say a country's got to do what a country's got to do. We have to defend ourselves.
In the most recent war in 2014, when we looked at mainstream media, almost by a margin of 3-1, Israeli spokespeople were overrepresented compared to Palestinian spokespeople. So almost every time you turned on the screen, there was an Israeli representative on the screen telling you Israel is the one that's in a position of defense. It is being attacked.
And basically Israel is saying, hey, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that if rockets fly on your head, you're allowed to defend yourself.
Add to this the fact that you have American also reinforcing Israel's right to defend it.
As I've said many times, Israel has a right to defend itself against rocket and tunnel attacks from Hamas.
And you hear some of the same framing by anchors who reiterate and reinforce many of the same talking points that the Israeli official spokespeople.
Israel has the right to defend itself against Hamas, of course, a group that is firing rockets on Israel coming out of tunnels to attack Israelis.
That imbalance was very significant in shaping the way the public understood this conflict.
I worked in European media for a long time. The coverage is the opposite. There's Palestinian legislators, Palestinian thinkers, Palestinian intellectuals, pro-Palestinian thinkers, many voices.
So let me say very frankly, it's very easy to blame the victim. It's very easy to pull out a terrorist label.
You come to America and you think that you're an alien. You're looking at a different world or a different planet. And I'm thinking, what's going on here?
When a narrative is so dominant,
thousands of
without any visible dissent or complication, it's extremely difficult to make clear to people that it is basically a propaganda story.
Israel is under siege by a terrorist organization.
How do you make that clear when the mainstream spectacle is so unrelenting and total?
We hear over and over again that the conflict comes down to Palestinian terrorism and Israeli security. And what gets pushed out of the frame entirely is the fact that for almost 50 years, Palestinians have been systematically dispossessed from their land and denied their most basic human rights.
Here is something that is completely indefensible. Israel knows this very well, and for that reason wants to talk about anything and everything else. They'd rather talk about terror. They'd rather talk about security. They'd rather talk about Iran. Anything but the occupation.
The reason they've been able to so effectively change the subject isn't because they're practicing some kind of mass mind control. The main reason is that the US government itself has had a vested interest in promoting this same narrative for almost 50 years now. This goes back to the start of the so-called special relationship with Israel in the late 1960s, when the US decides to deputize Israel and make it what the Nixon administration called cop on the beach, protect American interests in the Middle East, especially US energy supply. Ever since, the American government has continued to give Israel roughly $3 billion a year in military aid, while also vetoing one UN resolution after another condemning the occupation, etc. The challenge is to make sure that the American people stay on board with US aid, despite what Israel is doing.
A number of well-funded public relations organizations have emerged within the United States to help Israel justify its policies, especially the occupation and settlements, on security grounds. One of these groups is the Israel Project. In 2009, the Israel Project turned to conservative pollster and rebranding expert Frank Luntz.
Frank Luntz. This is the man that reframed the estate tax as the death tax, healthcare reform as government takeover of healthcare. Now, some critics have called Luntz a spin doctor who manipulates public emotion, but Luntz would reframe that as Fox News analyst.
The Israel Project hired him to determine which talking points used by Israeli and US officials over time have been most effective in maintaining American sympathy for Israel. Luntz wrote up his recommendations in a 2009 report called The Global Language Dictionary.
If you want to understand how the propaganda works, especially in the US, you need to read the Luntz doc. He's really clear that the occupation and especially the settlements are a problem. And he points to polls that show a large majority of Americans actually think that Israel should retreat to the 67 borders. In fact, he says, when you talk about land in terms of 67, you completely flip American sentiment against you. But, and this is his solution, if you bring up the danger of terrorism, you win back the support. The key, Luntz says, is to claim that the fight is over ideology, not land, about terror, not territory. In fact, these three words, terror, not territory, summarize the basis of the propaganda campaign in the US.
Good evening. In the 60 years of conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, there have been few, if...
Sorry, I just wanted to pause for a second, just because we had just done, a few weeks ago, we covered the gray zone, and they found the leaked polling that Frank Luntz had done, and it kind of really explained what we've all been seeing, why they keep referring back to the rape, because that sold even more. I mean, the idea that you have to sell a genocide is so monstrous that you poll test the language around your genocide. But I hadn't realized that he had been part of it for this amount of time. But also, just as a few people also were pointing out there, like, it's so gross because we know that Fox is spin doctors and liars. And back when Stephen Colbert was saying that about Luntz, I was with Colbert, and now I realize, like, wow, it's just so pervasive.
You know, and I was sort of thinking the same thing, but from a different perspective, because Luntz was a villain in the Colbert era, and now Colbert is sort of a normie dem in a way.
Yeah.
And Luntz isn't working for Fox now. Isn't he CNN?
I mean, they definitely have him on the either
right. So
neutral
he's been normalized. He's no longer this radical extremist. They always show him talking to citizens. He's always the guy with the mic in front of like the 10 people to get their opinions.
Yeah.
And you know, he's managed to go from the clear villain to just a normal guy who gets everyone's real takes and opinions, the guy on the street kind of guy. Like,
it really, I mean, because that's just 10 years. I mean, I don't know exactly when this documentary was made. I think it was in 16, but I'm not positive. But they hired him back in 2014 to come up with that, the Israel Project and all that terminology. If it weren't for social media, I think we'd all still be, not all, but so many of us would still be in the dark. But anyway, just fascinating that the same ghouls keep popping up, but you're right. Like some of the people that we used to think were sort of our heroes, unfortunately, have shown us who they really are. All right, continue.
Any days like this one.
The scale and intensity of this attack was surprising. The deadliest operation against Palestinians in decades.
After an intense 3-week assault, 1,300 dead, 5,000 wounded.
In late December of 2008, Israel launched Operation Cast Lead, a massive ground and air assault on the Gaza Strip.
The Air Force released this cockpit video.
Over a period of 3 weeks, the Israeli military dropped over 600 tons of bombs on Gaza.
It isn't clear yet how many civilians.
Nearly 1,400 Palestinians were killed and thousands more injured.
The wounded were carried on corrugated iron, in private cars, on backs, and in arms. The worst one-day casualty toll in Gaza anybody can remember.
Normally in a conflict, civilians can run for their lives. Gaza was one of the few, if not the only, modern conflict where the helpless civilians who were subjected to massive technologically advanced firepower by the Israelis had no escape route.
With Gaza City bombed and burning, Palestinians heeded Israel's warning to get out of the way, but found they had nowhere to go. What's a safe place for us to go, the woman cried. Not the UN compound where 700 people took shelter. Israeli artillery hit it, then hit it again.
It was a brutal, murderous attack, devastating. This attack was murderous.
As with the Lebanon invasion 3 decades before, horrific images of destruction spilled onto television screens around the world. But this time the Israeli government was prepared. 6 months earlier, it had set up a new unit within the Israeli Prime Minister's office to help coordinate the government's messaging once the invasion started.
Israel is defending its actions, saying this assault is in direct response to almost daily rocket and mortar attacks.
If you asked any American why that war started, they would say because the Palestinians started, firing rockets at Israel.
Hamas keeping up the rocket fire that triggered the Israeli attacks in the first place.
Hamas once again firing several dozen rockets into Israel today.
They're always preparing Americans for an attack against these people who are incorrigible terrorists, who are constantly shooting rockets and never, ever giving the other side of the story.
We were told endlessly in any media outlet you want to look at that Israel had to invade and attack the Gaza Strip because of an unending assault from Hamas and various militant groups in Gaza.
What are the goals of that operation right now?
To change totally the behavior of the Hamas. It's a terrorist regime that keeps shelling Israel with thousands of rockets and mortar shells.
What this forget is that for the latter half of 2008, there was a very successful ceasefire that curtailed rocket fire into Israel dramatic, almost to the point at which there was none. This was shattered in November of 2008 when Israel attacked what they said was a tunnel building project, killed 6 Hamas militants. At that point, the ceasefire was off. Now, the New York Times, the so-called paper of record, reported this very clearly one time.
The story gets buried on page 8 of the New York Times and hardly registers anywhere else. Why? Well, look at the day that Israel chose to break the ceasefire, November 4th, 2008, which just coincidentally happened to be the day of the historic election of Barack Obama. it virtually guaranteed that no one in America would know. And that's exactly how it played out. When Hamas
I just wanted to say, like, this is very similar to the October 7th. Obviously, Israel broke the ceasefire. Like, that has been completely covered up, I mean, by mainstream press, that Israel was the first one to break the ceasefire. And so you could look at Palestinians' attack on October 7th as terrorists, but it's also retaliation because the terrorists, if you want to call them terrorists, Israel broke their... It was a response to Israel's action. And it's the same thing in Iran. Iran's framing, the press is told, the public is told,
unprecedented.
Yeah, unprovoked. They have to respond to Iran's unprovoked attack, completely ignoring that they bombed an embassy, which is a literal war crime.
I mean, it's just amazing that the framing continues, and it still works on so many Americans. I mean, I don't think it works on younger people who don't get their news from corporate media, but it's the same playbook every time. And also just like calling it, like a military action when it's the Israeli forces, and terrorism when it's Hamas. Why isn't it a military action from Hamas? That's what it is. I mean, they are an occupied people fighting for their liberation. That is a military occupation, a military response. And it's also how the UN sees them. It's how the New York Times standards and practices person saw it until they pushed him out after October 7th. He did not want to call them terrorists, because what makes Hamas terrorists as opposed to the Israeli occupation forces or
under
the US?
International law, they are allowed to defend their country,
right,
using any means possible.
That's right. Yeah, amazing.
rocket attacks after Israel broke the ceasefire, Israeli officials went on American television and got away with blaming Hamas for breaking the ceasefire.
You know, it was Hamas that unilaterally tore up the ceasefire, understand. It was Hamas that escalated the violence that reached a crescendo on Christmas Day, when we had in one 24-hour period some 80 rockets, mortar shells, and missiles coming into Israel, attacking our civilians. Now, we want to work with the Parliament.
And the lie was then repeated uncritically by US news media.
James, there's no question here, is there, that Hamas started this?
Well, look, I don't think Israel had any choice. It was a ceasefire that was broken by Hamas. They fired something like 300 rockets into Israel. I mean, this is an act of war. What are they supposed to do?
Just compare this to how media outside the US dealt with this.
Isn't it the fact that during the ceasefire, not a single Israeli was killed? And the reason for that was because Hamas fired not a single rocket.
No, I think you're wrong, Alfred, because during that ceasefire of 6 months, they were firing rockets on a daily basis.
On Channel 4 in Britain, you saw an anchor presenting evidence that the Israeli government itself acknowledged that Hamas observed the ceasefire.
This is actually a document that's given to journalists by the Israeli government. And in this document, it says, and I'm quoting, Hamas was careful to maintain the ceasefire.
The Israeli official, clearly caught in a lie, attempts to change the subject to how evil Hamas is. But the interviewer doesn't let him get away with it.
They were firing rockets, and they're always trying to target civilians. Their main goal is to try to kill children and women. And not
Mr. Shalom, I'm going to have to stop you, because this document is published by the Intelligence and Terrorism Information Center at the Israel Intelligence Heritage and Commemoration Center, and they say that Hamas maintained the ceasefire.
It's not a government, it's a private institution.
It's given to foreign journalists by the government as a statement of fact.
Listen,
now the facts
you would like to hear the facts, or you would like to invent some facts?
I would like you to tell me the facts.
So
Exchanges like these are unthinkable in the US, even though Israel itself, behind the scenes, acknowledged Hamas had observed the ceasefire, something another British reporter forced Israeli spokesperson Mark Regev to admit on camera.
There were no Hamas rockets during the ceasefire. Before November the 4th, there were no Hamas rockets for 4 months.
And that's correct.
Israel officially recognizes that until it broke the ceasefire, Hamas didn't fire a single rocket. I mean, the propaganda is so powerful that these truisms, literally truisms, are almost inexpressible.
The lesson is that this conflict started when we say it started. And we say it started when Israel was attacked.
In 2012 and again in 2014, Israel launched 2 more devastating attacks on Gaza.
Israel can saturate the media with its spokespeople, but there's still the problem of massive Palestinian casualties showing up on television screen. You can't make those images go away. An Israeli official actually said, in the war of pictures we lose, so you need to correct, explain, or balance it in other ways. Here again, the Luntz document spells out which talking points have been most effective in spinning the brutal reality of Palestinian casualties. He says the first thing the pro-Israeli spokespeople should do is to express empathy for the innocent victims.
Unfortunately, innocents do get hurt, and we really grieve that.
We're sad for every civilian casualty.
The entire situation is tragic.
Once you've done that, Luntz says, you also have to get people to empathize with Israelis by describing what life is like for them, living in constant fear of Hamas rocket attacks. So again and again, we hear the focused, tested phrase that the rockets are raining down on Israel.
We have thousands of rockets raining down on our civilians.
Rockets were raining down on Israel.
Any advertising executive will tell you the essence of propaganda is repetition.
Rockets raining down on southern Israel.
Rockets raining down on Israel. Well, Hamas rockets rain down on Israeli border towns.
Then Luntz tells PR spokespeople to turn the tables and ask the American people, what would you do?
So what would you do in the United States?
Can you imagine what America would do if it were facing a similar threat?
We always try to ask you the question we ask ourselves. What will you do?
What would you do?
What would you do if more than 3,000 rockets had been fired on your cities?
What would you do? 3,000 rockets.
What would you do if terrorists were tunneling under your frontier?
What would you do if 3 kids are kidnapped because of a tunnel network?
What sort of question? Of course, anybody would act to defend themselves against unprovoked aggression, but it is a question that is completely devoid of any context. What drives the society to a point where after multiple devastating wars, they continue to resist with these most feeble methods? They don't want you to ask. They don't want you to ask what is behind this. What's the history? Who are these people? Where did they come from? Why are they so desperate? No, they want you to understand Israeli behavior. Israeli behavior is always characterized as a reaction to unprovoked violence.
Then on top of that, when massive numbers of Palestinian civilians predictably die from Israeli attack, Israel claims it's part of a deliberate Hamas strategy to drum up sympathy.
They use telegenically dead Palestinians for their cause. They want the more dead, the better.
So they end up in this upside-down Orwellian world where Israelis killing civilians becomes an unforgivable transgression against Israelis.
It is hard to come away with any feeling but that we are in the midst of a world gone mad. Last week, I found a quote of many years ago by Golda Meir, one of Israel's early leaders, which might have been said yesterday. We can forgive the Arabs for killing our children, she said, but we can never forgive them for forcing us to kill their children.
It's not difficult to imagine Americans identifying with Palestinians who are suffering, but they need to be able to see that suffering on their television screens and in their newspapers.
Israel said today its new offensive is targeting terrorists.
And when your sense of the coverage is that there's something that these people did to deserve this, or that they are affiliated with terrorists and terrorist-minded government, the fallout of that is an inability to identify with people who are suffering in far greater numbers and in far greater proportion than their Israeli counterpart.
In each of these cases, these journalists were mercilessly attacked and labeled anti-Semitic. It didn't matter that they were both Jewish. That's how the climate of intimidation worked.
It's almost impossible to get any view that isn't one way or another shaped by an Israeli perspective. Almost impossible. It cannot get in without facing a firestorm of pit bull attacks to make sure that the line is followed.
Everyone who's trying to tell the American public a different side of the story, an alternative view of the conflict that's reality-based, has already crossed a barrier of fear. And I think they've already told themselves, well, I'm gonna pay for this, but I'm ready to pay the price.
Sorry, first of all, I just want to apologize because we did cut out some of the pauses so we could see a little bit more of this, but I want to apologize to the filmmakers because that's not the way they presented their final product. We are just kind of, and we chopped it up a bit. So
well, Lila chopped it up, and then I spit it through a computer program that just takes out all the gaps. So it just we tried to speed it up, so it's like you can get the gist of it in 20 minutes.
You just wanted to get to some of the points, but that's I don't want you to I don't want that to reflect poorly on the actual filmmakers.
No, it's really well done. They're on all the clips we're watching. It's all expanded on a lot more in the actual movie,
and they do a lot of history about what happened in between and the loss of land and the British mandate and all that. I guess it's just money. It is really fascinating to see that journalists even in the UK, which is part of this disgusting Zionist project, but journalists in the UK are much more confrontational than journalists in the US. Do you think, is it just like, are we just patting them with so much more money here that it makes them not want to stir the pot? I mean, I just don't understand it.
It's hard to know. I mean, it could be just that our political system is so easily beholden to money. I mean, when they changed the laws here,
right,
to allow corporations to act as people, basically,
right.
Citizens United changed the weight that a dollar had from corporations. So, we allow, I don't know what the lobbyist regulations are in the UK, but like we allow all these groups here to exist and not have to register as foreign agents if they're supporting Israel in a weird,
which is so
extremely dysfunctional way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're the extreme version of capitalism gone amok. So it's like we are the worst version of any exploiting that can happen to people over tragedy. It's going to happen here the most.
I mean, you just look at how not
the
a
most.
single journalist on corporate news talks about Julian Assange ever. They were really bent out of shape when Jim Acosta was called like some ridiculous name by Trump. And they all sort of found that integrity, which of course it was ridiculous, but of being confrontational to everybody in the Trump administration, which is what they should be always to everybody in power. And it's just so refreshing to see, British journalists speak like that. And you never see that in the US ever.
No, but that disconnect is really playing out in the streets and in the colleges. And that's why we're seeing it, because young people they're not getting this spoon-fed propaganda all the time about this stuff. And as the Luntz doctrine even says, basically, you need to cover up the images with some sort of story about how these are thugs and criminals and savages. And the movie gets into more than I think we clipped there, but that's not being portrayed to young people, because young people are getting their news from TikTok. They're getting it from Palestinians. They're getting the full breadth of the story.
Right.
And it's not working. And you can't sit by when you know the truth of a situation like Palestine and support the people funding it. And it's going to be really bad for Democrats.
Yeah.
Which I don't mind that at this point.
I don't either, but yeah, what a disaster. There's only a few more minutes of this and then we'll move on. Okay.
For just the past few years, the proliferation of social media and internet news sources has made it increasingly difficult for the Israeli government and pro-Israel groups in the US to manage American perceptions of the conflict. Video footage and reporting from the ground bearing witness to the reality of the occupation are now more accessible than ever on the internet. In addition, over the past few years, a number of high-profile documentaries made by Israeli and Palestinian filmmakers alike have trained a harsh light on current Israeli policy and the repression of Palestinians.
תחשבים, אין לכם לב, אין לכם משפחה. כל אחד מכם יודע זה אדמה של בלעים. אתם גנבתם אדמה שלנו.
At the same time, a powerful new boycott, divestment and sanctions movement has been gaining momentum and raising awareness of the occupation, while activists from the Black Lives Matter movement have been making explicit connections between police violence against African Americans and the Israeli military's repression of Palestinians.
We stand next to people who continue to courageously struggle and resist the occupation. People continue to dream and fight for freedom. From Ferguson to Palestine, the struggle for freedom continues.
And all of these developments seem to be having an effect. Polls now show that while sympathy for Israel remains at all-time highs among older Americans, it has been hemorrhaging among young people.
Despite the efforts of the lobby, something really striking is taking place. Lots of young people are abandoning the mainstream media and turning instead to other independent sources. So they have a totally different way of making sense of what's happened, an unfiltered view of Israel's repression. And pro-Israel operatives like Frank Luntz are in a panic. In his latest report, he calls what's happening with young people a disaster and demands that Israel supporters respond. And people have answered the call. You have powerful right-wing billionaires like Sheldon Adelson, a major donor to Republican candidates, bankrolling a campaign to silence and intimidate student activists on college campuses. But it's not working. Groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, who see what's happening to Palestinians as a civil rights issue, have refused to be intimidated. They're refusing to back down, even though they're being labeled as anti-Semitic and terrorist sympathizers, and their numbers are growing.
as the discourse begins to open, more people are starting to understand this as a rights-based issue, not an issue of radicalism. This is a movement for the rights of people whose rights are being denied, who are living under occupation, who want to live in their country freely just like anybody else.
You can see just so many video clips of kids having their hands smashed by soldiers with batons. You can see just so many pictures of thousands of people being killed, as happened in Gaza. And at a certain point, there's a cognitive dissonance. You realize that what you're being told is a pack of lies.
Let's just get away from the mythologies and talk about the reality, and then maybe be able to persuade people that they should not any longer give their unwavering support to a nation engaged in a policy that's not just inhumane and brutal, but ultimately suicidal.
Given the central role that the United States plays in backing Israel, it seems to me Americans, all Americans, have a right to question particular Israeli policies, and in particular the prolonged occupation. The fact that the Palestinian people have been kept without a state and without any political rights for decades now.
For us in the United States, I think the issue has to be, what is our government doing? How is our government allowing, enabling, supporting, arming, defending Israeli violation?
In the end, this comes down to a battle for the minds of the American people, a battle over the stories they're told to make sense of this conflict, a battle over perception. The more Americans are able to see the reality of occupation with their own eyes, to see images of routine daily violence, of the repression and humiliation that never make their way into mainstream news, the more they'll question the image of Israel as this tiny little David up against the bullying Arab Goliath, and start to wonder if it's actually the outgunned Palestinians who might be the real David. When that starts becoming the dominant perception here in the US, all bets are off. It all comes down to American public perception.
That's the one way to change any changing perception and understanding here, leading to a change of policy here. As long as the United States supports Israel, nothing's going to happen. The US government will support it as long as the US population tolerates it.
I think that was the end, right?
Yeah, that was the end.
I thought you might have stopped it to get my cat's ear off the camera.
No, I was just writing down all these different, I mean, it touches on so many different things that we all always talk about, but that intersectionality, seeing like the Black Lives Matter protests and the connection between Ferguson and Palestine. And I was hearing things like that right at the beginning of my sort of being awakened to this. I mean, it took me far too long, I'm embarrassed to say. It's probably the last 10 years. So that's horrifying. But the advent of social media has really, I think, helped open a lot of people's minds. Because the fact that we just passed this bill that gives 60 something more billion dollars to Israel, another 25 to Ukraine, bans TikTok, expands surveillance.
That's the point to it, is that it also, while we're giving them the money, we're shutting down all press coverage of it, which is the TikTok thing. We're trying to minimize. We're doing the Hasbara. We are committing the propaganda. And for what? Who's safer from this? Who? It's about money. It's not about safety on any level.
About the Benjamins. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's so gross, but yeah, we're an oil company with an army. That's what they always say. And it's really true, right? Like that is the outpost that, Israel and our special relationship is the outpost for us in the Middle East. They are the cops of the Middle East. And it's all about protecting our investments.
It is, but I think our government is we're so screwed at this point that the moral reasoning for the war doesn't even matter. Like, to me, I think the military industrial complex is so powerful that they just alone have influence to keep anything going, no matter how unpopular for politicians, even because their money speaks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, clearly, I know we always cite the Princeton Stanford study from 2017 that we're no longer a democracy, but it just every day becomes clearer and clearer. I always have to preface anything I say about Bernie with the aside that, yes, I know we're all past Bernie and all that kind of stuff. But when all of those polls came out with the Fox audience or with Republicans, the exit polls in 2020 saying they were majority supportive of all of the same issues that we all know that we need and deserve. And it doesn't matter. None of it matters. It doesn't matter how many Democrats you have. It doesn't matter how much you vote harder, don't boo, vote. It's not changing because we don't have the money. So you're not voting your way out of this. They have to be scared of us. It is just all about fear. They have to. And I think it's going to get to that point, but that's also why they are militarizing our police, why they're shutting down speech, while they're making everything this broad scope of terrorism and anti-Semitism and policing language. They're coming for all of us, no matter what it is. And I saw Kimmy said something about possibly the reason, and I think this is a really good point, why the journalists in the US might be a little bit scared about speaking against power is, and again, like I know we talk about this all the time, but it is a huge disciplining tactic to attach healthcare to your job, right?
It is, and it's where we have a different level of McCarthyism now. So if you're a journalist, you're not going to talk about Israel, you're going to do what you can, but you're going to follow the marching orders of your higher ups because you already know what's at stake here. And they're making examples of everybody in every industry.
Yeah.
You know, Google just fired employees for a sit-in, you know, a 24-hour sit-in or something. It was not even like, you know, we're going to not work forever. No, you're fired, gone by.
Until we smash that whole system, people are really at the mercy, which is what, you know, like the mutual aid and figuring out ways to have some insurance collectively to support each other when there is some sort of general strike or whatever that is that will change things. But right now they definitely do have the upper hand. And especially, I cannot believe the audacity of trying to shut down TikTok. And then also, you know, I mean, I know we've talked about this before, but like, I grew up in a house where my parents, you know, were Jewish. We're still very much like, we're not buying anything from Germany or even Japan. Like, you know, there was definitely, but mostly Germany, you know. And now we have German police officers arresting Jews for being anti-Semitic.
That part is blowing my mind. I mean, look, you can understand Germans being hyper vigilant about anti-Semitism. They should be.
Yeah, but that's not what they're doing.
This makes it so clear that this is not anti-Semitic. This is.
They didn't learn the lesson of the Holocaust.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. If the lesson is support Israel at all costs, even during a genocide, clearly the lesson of World War II and the Holocaust was not learned by many people. I mean, they canceled, where was that? I think it was in Germany. Yanis Varoufakis was supposed to do a speech. It was like, there was a whole convention, like a Palestinian convention. They just shut it down. Yeah. It's like
here's the
Minority
thing
Report.
with capitalism, these people never, you know, I mean, we can say Germany paid a price for decades for their anti-Semitism and everything they did, and the Holocaust, obviously. But look at the businesses that people don't even recognize as being German related, you know.
Yeah.
Nike, Puma, both.
Well, that's connected. The other thing, right?
What are those, the shoes that the black shoes with the white
I know what you're talking about. I mean,
but there's so many things. Volkswagen, obviously.
Yeah. Mercedes, Benz, BMW, whatever, all of those. But it's all global anyway, right? So it's actually, you know, it's so hard because they're like, there's segments of conspiracy theory and all these like far right yahoos. And what they're going to do is they go globalist and then Rothschild and then Martins. Jews, Doc Martens. Good job. Globalists becomes the Rothschilds, becomes the tentacles of the Jews who control everything, right? Like that's where it goes. But the truth is this globalist cabal And there is like the reason that we have the World Economic Forum and the the IMF is so that the people in charge of the world, that they have their own little nation state. I mean, that is what's happening. So yes, you're right. They're like German companies, but it's also like, some of the people are here, some of them are in Mexico. It doesn't matter because the people who own all of that they're all just cavorting at the, Davos.
Right. But the good news is we are in a different era.
Yeah.
Kids know what's going on. People know what's going on. The difference is they've got more power over us to shut us down because we've legislated, we've allowed both sides of our country that both Democrats and Republicans have legislated for the same goal, which is support whoever's giving us fucking money. And the people giving us money have more police power to shut us down. And sorry, I'm getting attacked by a cat reaching out under a desk. I wish I had a cat cam on because literally my hand is clawed right now.
That would be excellent. Wait, I had a thought and then I saw, so I better just do it now. And thank you so much for the super chat. I think that's what it's called. I'm so bad with all this stuff, but thank you. And I'm going to say your name wrong, Macarius. And I know I've asked you before, but I always ask you after I've had too much to drink. So I'm sorry. I'll write it down next time, but thank you. It totally just right out of my head. Good. Thank you, Macarius. Okay, good.
You're welcome.
The whole like Minority Report where everybody, thank you. Got it. Thank you. Where the pre-crime, right? Like just by virtue of being born Palestinian, you could be a terrorist. The idea that they are allowed to do that and that it is still so persuasive with people is terrifying to me. Because it really is. Like,
and I know it's kind of obvious, but I saw a tweet recently of a baby that was killed, and it's like, okay, say what you want. This baby was not alive 6 months ago. So if you want to put some sort of Hamas thing on them, like you're really just an evil fuck.
Yeah, they're born criminals.
You're racist.
I mean, that really is. They're born criminals. Yeah, that's it's just a vile ideology, and I think it will end. And I know every time I've been really negative tonight, I know you're trying to like say, and it's true. Like people are waking up to it, but like I just cannot get past the horror of what's happened to Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank, and that can't ever be erased, forgiven, gotten past. I know you're not, but like I don't know how anybody who will survive this will ever be able to function like a person. I mean, I don't know how. It's just horrifying.
Look, it's really depressing that we've had not a lot of impact with the whole world looking at this, and we haven't, we've gotten food in, which wouldn't have gotten in, I guess. But the upside, I think, is like, I think Americans, after having gone through Occupy, Black Lives Matter, and now we're in this place where it's like, look, we see that protests are not doing it. I mean, it's important to do that, but like we need to get something from that other than some legislation named after George Floyd,
which
that
still
actually increases police.
Yeah, as lame as it was, still hasn't happened.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think people are going to simmer down because Joe Biden comes out and says some things about a ceasefire or,
No, I think you're right.
We're waiting for action. And I think enough people are involved now and bought in and have a lot on the line, not just for Palestine. The young people have, healthcare, jobs, houses. You can't buy a house.
I mean, they don't feel like they're
doomed to
poverty.
They're doomed to poverty unless they already have money. And that's, there's hope in how shitty things have gotten that we could actually finally stick to something and stay until we get something to change.
I hope so. I was just listening to The Dig. I don't know if you listened to it. It's Jacobin's podcast. And there was another speech convention, like lots of different speakers came together. And one of the things, and I've heard, oh gosh, I'm going to forget his name now and get it wrong. So forgive me. I'll look it up. But anyway, he's a Mizrahi Jew, so an Arab Jew, and was saying that there's a really big difference between European Jews and Arab Jews, because Arab Jews had a history of, there's always been anti-Semitism, there's internal strife, there's political strife, there's things that happen. But as a group, he was saying that Arab Jews don't look at their history until the state of Israel is created as a history of just constant suffering. And that sort of became part of the Zionist narrative. And they used that, as we know, where like to the point where even Ben Gurion refused to allow children to be rescued to the UK, rather have them sent back and die in the Holocaust if they weren't going to be sent to Israel or to Palestine at that point, because that would help the project of Zionism more, right? Like the anti-Semitism and Zionism go hand in hand. And that's a really sad state of affairs if your connection to your religion is only the idea of how we have suffered and how we might suffer again. And yes, of course, never again a Holocaust, but like never again do a Holocaust. It doesn't, it's just interesting that it went different ways for two different groups. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the right in this country now, they're openly like connecting it to their Christianity.
Yeah.
Which is just really like next level. I'm not religious at all. I hate all religions equally. I respect everyone's right to believe in their wrong religion. But I don't want it a part of my government. I don't want the Speaker of the House using that to, I don't want him quoting the Bible.
God. I know, that was crazy.
In public discussions.
We shouldn't even have a national prayer breakfast. Like we'd have none of that. It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
None of that should be part of it.
And his quote was something like, for the people who are believers, this is, and he
quoted like a part of the Bible. I heard the excerpt. Yeah.
Tomorrow, or Wednesday, but like.
David, thank you so much for gifting a membership. We appreciate it. I saw you said you were sent here by Devin, so thank you. Thanks to Devin, who got home from work in time. Thank you. And thank you for the membership. We really appreciate that.
Devin and David, cheers.
The other thing is what it wasn't Spectrum. What was and I don't think it was Comcast. It starts with an S, but it was like 2 years ago, and they showed the packaged local news and everybody was saying the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Who was
right.
it?
Were they?
Yeah. But it's like, it's so clear. And again, that was another thing that libs made fun of. Like, look what they do on right-wing media. And they do, and it's disgusting. But I mean, that's what's happening here. Every time they say Israel has a right to protect itself or defend itself or whatever, the bombs were raining down.
The biggest point in that is that, look, there's one side where they're using the choice language from the Luntz doctrine of, victims and all that stuff. The other piece is there's no representation on the media from anyone from Palestine when they're having this discussion.
100%.
So it's like, yeah, once in a while they'll have an activist or somebody who's delivering food and they'll say something, but there's no they never have anyone on to bring in the historical,
ever,
lay out the roadmap of how we got here, what's going on between Israel and Palestine, what came before this.
And
look, Israel broke the ceasefire. Oh, they broke the ceasefire again. Oh, look, they had the first Nakba. None of that is ever explained to the public at all.
Do you know what's so crazy is I think it was like banned. You weren't allowed to talk about or teach about the Nakba in Israel. You weren't allowed to talk about it until October 8th. And then they said it's going to be Nakba 2.0. It was denied that if you had talked to an Israeli official before October 8th, I mean, I know the event happened on the 7th when history started, but on the 8th, when they started saying all their stuff, then they started talking about Nakba 2.0. They never talked about a Nakba before that for 75 years.
Yeah, which is crazy. please watch that documentary. We should put a link.
Yeah, we should move on.
Go
ahead.
We should.
What did you say?
We should put a link up to it.
We will put a link up. Occupation of the American Mind. It came out in 2016, and I think you can still watch it for free. So if you just do a search for that, their website comes up. It's really good. It's really
good. I think it's a little over an hour and a half.
Yeah. I feel like we watched all of it.
and I watched it for the first time. I was literally flying back from Utah, and I'm like, Lila, I need something to watch for our show. What do you got? And she gave it to me, and I'm like, we got to get, we have to share this more.
It's so good, right?
It nails it all.
It nails it all. And it's, okay. So the next thing that kind of like relates to this, so what we're trying to do, and, this is still, we're still experimenting with this the Sunday Night Shit Show. But is to try to have a political comedian who somehow ties in to the clips that we're showing of either a documentary or a news item or whatever it is. And I'm sure most of you know Matt Lieb. He's a stand-up comedian, and he has his own podcast called Bad Hasbara. And he's great. I mean, really funny Jewish comedian who really loves to poke fun at work in progress. Thank you for finding.
I haven't watched his actual show too many times, but I've watched Francesca. Is that her name?
Yeah,
Francesca.
His co-host, his wife.
Oh, his wife.
She's his wife.
Jealous.
I know.
That's a whole nother show.
I know.
But no, that's great. That she's really good. She's a TY. She's got a show on TYT as well.
Right.
I believe, right?
She did. I don't know. I used to watch him, but I stopped.
I think she's still
you still watch them? Canceled.
No,
Canceled. No, I'm kidding.
They tried to cancel me this week, but we're not going to get into that. Anyway, let's show some clips from Matt. He's a funny ass guy. Jewish himself, obviously, and I'm not going to miss the intro.
We're going to. Okay. All right, so this is Matt Lieb on how to criticize Israel.
I'm seeing a lot of people on the so-called left criticizing Israel while falling into the same anti-Semitic tropes that I've seen time and time again. So I, an American Jew, am going to tell you how to correctly criticize Israel without being accused of anti-Semitism. Here are some don'ts. Do not overstate your case. Don't go throwing around the word apartheid state. Apartheid only ever happened in South Africa, and you can't use that word again. You can't just keep using words. Call it something that is correct, like a kerfuffle. Just be like, oh, that's a kerfuffle, they go there. Do not mention the Palestinians or the occupation, okay? If you want to talk about problems in Israel, talk about how there's a lot of stray cats and how the traffic's really bad. Do not throw around the word genocide. You guys just throw it around like it's just nothing. Do not support a one-state solution. If there was a one-state solution, Israelis might lose their demographic majority, and that is literally genocide. Do not support a two-state solution. Do not support a solution. What, you think you got all the answers? You're so smart. Do not be a Palestinian, an Arab, a black person, or a Muslim, okay? All of those groups are racist against Jews. And I think I know a thing or two about racism, because I just said something racist. Do not be a Reform Jew. The only real Jews are religious Jews or, Israeli citizens. Do not be an anti-Zionist Israeli. What the are you doing? Do not be an anti-Zionist Orthodox Jew. That ruins my narrative. Fuck my shit up. I don't like that. Do not call yourself an anti-Zionist. There's many definitions of Zionism. There's the nice one, and then there's what's actually happening. And while you may be against what's actually happening in Israel right now, when you say you're an anti-Zionist, you make me think that you're against the fantasy version of Zionism that I have in my head. Just call yourself a liberal Zionist. It's that easy. Do not be a liberal Zionist. Liberals are basically leftists, which are basically socialists, which are basically communists, which is Stalin, and Stalin hated Jews. So what are you, Stalin? To be safe, call yourself a Zionist. Do not be a Jew. if you are not a Jew and you're like, oh, but what about the Palestinians? Then like, how am I supposed to know that you actually care about the Palestinians? What if you're just crying because you hate me? Do not call for a ceasefire. When you call for a ceasefire, all I'm hearing is that you want more fire. Do not talk about anything on social media, okay? If you want to criticize Israel, open up a Word doc, write out all your thoughts within the parameters that I've set up, and then close that doc and just move about your day. And finally, do not criticize Israel. Just don't.
He's good. He's so dry that for some people, like I see the comments and the sections responses on TikTok, and it's all that like, you had me in the first half, because sometimes if you don't already know who he is, it's like, oh my God. But it sounds exactly like everybody.
Yeah, and I love the people that like start off agreeing with him because they're like not knowing he's parody yet.
Yeah.
Or even like as somebody who ran parody accounts, like sometimes people truly just don't have the parody gene to understand it.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'd get retweeted by the people
they agree
totally on board with the terrible thing I said, like something Matt Lieb just did.
Hillary was right about everything.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. He came out to the Hollywood protest in January, if not now, and did a stand-up set. We have a few different clips, and we have that. I don't know. What do you think? Because I know you had high hopes for doing this just for an hour, but we're at an hour 12, and I just don't want anybody who has to get up early tomorrow to be resentful that we mentioned possibly we're going to get them out of here early.
No, he's got some other good stuff.
Do you want it? Yeah.
Let's should we ceasefire immediately? Ceasefire identity. Let's do that one.
Okay.
Do we just both?
Okay, I just have to say, it's a little weird how many people I see on social media who have made being pro-Palestine their entire identity. That's all you've been talking about for like 3 months. Like just, ceasefire, whatever. I'm pro-Israel, and I have not thought about Palestinians in months. Like since, November or something? Or like whenever the bombing started. So I'm saying that it's just like, it's weird that so many people, like, all they talk about are like Palestine, ceasefire, genocide, whatever. Like, Israel is also under attack, but I'm posting about other stuff too, because I just know that that's going to be fine. Like, I'll go weeks without thinking about anything other than myself. And then I'll go on social media, and the same people are just like, Palestine. I'll turn on the news, and once again, it's just Palestine. It's like, what's going on here? I mean, this feels a little anti-Semitic. There's genocide going on. It's like, okay, I get it, but like also, season 4 True Detective just started. Like, can we talk about that? Can we talk about fucking McRib is back? Other stuff is happening in the world. What's going on with Africa? Like black people, they're always, but there's always something going on there. Why didn't you talk about inner city violence? I'm just saying the timing of all this seems really suspicious. The ICJ is going to put out this decision the day of Tu B'Shvat, which is our famous Jewish tree holiday that everybody knows about. Coincidence? I don't think so. I'm saying that if your entire identity online is dedicated to stopping a genocide, maybe you should rethink your priorities. Yeah.
He's great. He has guests on every week. He often co-hosts with Aaron Mate's brother, Daniel, who's like a Broadway producer, does show tunes and stuff. So they're really funny. They're very clever. And it's just a nice breath of fresh air from what we're all used to hearing in real life. I have a nice bubble on Twitter and like here with all of you. And then, the thing the two things that I confront a lot in real life are people who clearly don't want to talk about any of this. Like they're liberals. They want to go back to brunch. Truly, like I know it's so trite to keep saying that, but like it's that David Sedaris piece about like I don't listen to the news anymore. Everything's fine. And I started saying this to this person I just met yesterday. I'm sure she was like, really? We're at a pre-prom festivity for our kids. I'd never met her before. And she started talking about like Trump and this. I was like, yeah, I mean, he's horrible, but, and she's like, and the EPA and the environment. I was like, but did you know that Biden actually bypassed 26 environmental laws to continue building Trump's wall that just was announced 2 months ago? No idea. Nothing. You know, so like, yeah, I'm Debbie Downer. I see it like Kimmy is saying that. Yeah. I mean, like they just want to feel happy. And why am I crushing their buzz or yucking their yum or whatever the hell they are all feeling? It's amazing.
All just rubs that cognitive dissonance part of their brain where they don't want to have new beliefs come in. You know, it's like Democrats good, Republicans bad. It's so easy. But I am finding the same thing that like, you've got people who, the normie Dems that I know, they want to hear something reassuring. They want to challenge me,
right?
And bring up so that I could say like, "Oh, I'm on board for Biden now because it's so bad on the right."
So what do they say to you? Because I know what they say to me, which is, you think you? I mean, which
here's what they say. They say, "Fuck, Biden is in deep trouble, isn't he?" And I'm like, yeah, he's not going to win. They're like, but Trump is the courts. And, you know, like, and I'm like, guys, if you're relying on that, like the right doesn't even care. He could be in jail. So the court part of it, unless they legally say he can't run, that ain't going to be enough. And, you know, the right, they're going to support their guy. People on the left are going to support their guy. But I always tell them, like, younger people are not following the news you are. Younger people are in a whole different place with what's going on with Palestine, and they're not going to forgive it. So I always say Palestine just ended this election. Trump is our next president. If you care about it,
look, you don't think that he'd be doing just as bad of a job? You don't think he'd be worse? That's what I get. You don't think he'd be worse? I'm like, yeah.
And I say that doesn't matter because the young people are watching what Biden is doing now. So the enthusiasm is not going to be there. Those are the people you need to enthusiastically go out to vote for you. And now we're fighting them on colleges. We're locking them up. We're suppressing TikTok. We're like, they don't have a future. Look at the houses. They can't. I go into that shit and I'm like, they're not going to vote for Biden. Like he lost it. You know, you could lay out the moral argument of who you should vote for. And even if you're right, it doesn't matter. They're so impacted by this policy that Biden's putting on them. They are not going to vote for Biden.
Well, do they want Trump?
And I just say, I don't care. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Then you don't care about, you know, the disadvantaged people. It's always a white rich person who says that.
But the point is, they are not in a position to, like, they are so impacted by all this stuff that if you could make the argument and convince them that they should vote for Trump, they're still not going to be enthusiastic enough to come out and vote a lot. Like, that's the way elections work. You need these people to be happy to vote for your guy or you lose, because if the other side has more people happy to vote for their guy, they win.
Right.
And Biden has
decimated his base. Yeah.
Young people are so disillusioned, and the older generations have no idea what's coming.
Yeah, they don't. And they're so severely underinformed. Like, they have everything that they will tell you about Trump that they hate about Trump. They don't know that Biden's done all of it. And worse, actually. They just have no idea, except for the dumb tweets. That's it. But he's done everything else. And by the way, all the racist tweets Biden said out loud on the floor of the Senate in the 80s. So, like, you know, it's ridiculous. My brain. Oh my God. Frizzle. Yeah. The runs. I'm curious what Pat and Lila say when a blue MAGA panics about Project 2025. I mean, again, it's always a privileged white person. They often don't even know about Project 2025, but, you know, they'll say something about, like, well, what about, you know, Black and brown communities, or, you know, oh my God, I do this every time after I've had too much to drink. LGBTQ plus communities and, Roe v. Wade, like they'll bring up 3 things, or voting rights or democracy. And I don't have a lot of patience for it, because nothing happened when Obama had a supermajority. Nothing happened when Biden had 2 years of 3 wings of, the both chambers of Congress and the White House. So they don't care either. And they don't care if Trump wins, because they wouldn't run Biden if they cared if Trump won.
But also, I mean, I point to like the biggest change from 2020 to now is the increase in Black support that Trump has gotten. So like, if you want to say, what about the damage to minorities? And the minorities are one of the biggest groups abandoning Biden from the last election. Like, that's me being more in camaraderie with them than the Democratic Party.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it is frustrating though, because they all have the same talking points, and also they are terrified of Trump. And that's, it's interesting how all the same tactics are used, right? They're terrified of Trump. Another woman was telling me this is all Putin. She's like, you should see Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing Putin talking points. And I was like, I mean, maybe she is, but it's not just Putin. And some of them are actually even true, but whatever. She's a moron. Oh my God. Really? Pat.
Actually, you're freezing just in time, because I'll play us a little timeline cleanse and we can come back for questions and
for God's sakes. All right, I'll be back in a second. I can't believe it.
What do we got? Should I torture people? Lila, be gone. I'm taking you.
All right, I'm leaving.
Get out of here. She doesn't need to hear this. All right, I'm gonna torture.
This is the most election of our lifetime.
She is a big problem.
Okay.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong. He's done everything wrong.
Okay, I didn't even mean to play that one. Here, I'll put you on the here.
You caught me grabbing some more wine. Was that the genocide Joe clip?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to bring that into the conversation a little bit, like he's going to be worse probably on Israel, but he's not going to run on being worse on Israel. He's going to run on not having fucked it up so bad and look at the genocide. And
by the way, it's pretty much done at that point. Like, I mean, by the time he comes into office next January, like, look at what's left of Gaza at this point anyway.
No, if this whole thing ended and we're like just all solution based and there's no more killing, Israel got what they wanted out of this thing. So where do we go from here? But like, all that genocide happened under Biden. He allowed it. We funded it. Republicans did too. But Trump did not. Right. This is the key. He is not in power. He is not an elected official. So he can frame whatever narrative he wants. And when he hears his crowd chanting Genocide Joe, that's going to make him lean into the, I'm not Genocide Joe. He's the genocide guy. He's the bad guy. And it's going to work.
Yeah, it is going to work.
What do you have to lose if you, it's just so bad. Like we have no choices. We have no one representing us. So like
he is the one who said, Netanyahu's got to wrap this up. The whole world is turning against Israel.
Yeah.
Like that's stronger than any condemnation that Biden has said. And then people will say, well, he was so much worse. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem, and okay, well, Biden could have moved it back or canceled that, or, the Trump tax cuts. Why didn't we repeal them? The Iran nuclear deal. Why didn't we get back into that? I mean, every single thing that he did that people are saying, like, and I mean, okay, normalizing relationships with the rest of the Middle East and by skirting, by skirting Palestine, which was part of the whole reason that this started, on October 7th, right? Was that the Palestinians were going to be left behind as the rest of the capitalist world just moved on without them. That's what normalizing relations are, right? Just like we're all just going to get along because money makes us happy and fuck the Palestinians. I mean, that's exactly what it was, right? So whatever Trump did, Biden didn't. I mean, it's the whole ratchet effect. He didn't even backtrack on anything, or not backtrack, but he didn't fix any of the problems. He just kept moving along. So,
and you've got the Democratic Party running on like the immigration piece, which is one of the grossest. It was one of the grossest pieces to progressives and leftists, is like the kids in cages. It was a very visual, AOC with their crying moment in front of the cages. And then meanwhile, we're giving them, Democrats are running on giving them, we tried to give them everything. We really tried to give them everything they wanted. Yeah. And you wonder why our base is going to, when I say our, I pretend I'm a Democrat.
I know, but yeah, I know.
Referring to the left.
Yeah.
But the Democrats base is going to be disenfranchised, unenthusiastic, because they see that's not fighting when you just tried to give them everything they wanted on an issue that was very painful to a lot of Hispanic people.
Disgusting. Like a fascist border bill.
Right. And he deported more people than ever. He gave the police more money than ever.
Yeah.
On top of following the BLK movement, Black Lives Matter movement, he gave the police more money, So like on every tier, he got the flag, the trans flags can't fly anymore at embassies.
I mean, so like
he's
maybe,
are you trying to lose? Because that's how you lose.
That's how you lose. And also, the same thing about the trans rights that are being stripped away. There is a way, as the leader of the free world, to bully states because you do have some financial power over them, right? There's a way to say, like, no, that's not how we treat our people.
Of course, but we're supposed to be afraid of the other guy, but this guy he has no power as president. But the other guy, if he gets in, it's all going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, you're the guy who lost this abortion under your term.
Yeah.
Because you have no power as president. But when he becomes president, it's just
Republicans are all powerful. Even when they're in the minority, Republicans are all powerful. And when Democrats are the leader of the free world.
And obviously on the climate, another thing young people are very concerned about. Yeah. Here he is approving the biggest export port of oil that has ever existed. I mean, it's just it's one reason not to vote for him after another.
Yeah. And also one reason after another to show us that like there's really no difference. And I know people will say the thing about democracy, and even in the idea, like another person was saying to me, like, oh, they're gonna have the National Guard out there and destroy all of the, voting results or staging a coup. And maybe I'm being naive. I don't think that the deep state, which does exist, I don't think that they would go that far. They'll go as far as signing a letter that they know is a lie, saying that the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation. They'll do that. But I don't think that they will take over and like install Trump for his whole life. I just don't think that's, thank you. A few of you have also written in the chat. I saw, so thank you. Yes, make sure to like and subscribe, smash that notification bell. Should we do our questions? Is that where we are? Are we
I think we should, but I did say I was going to torture people, so I kind of feel like I have to torture them.
Torture
I might cut it off early because I can't handle it at some point. But
oh God, I don't even know what it's going to be. I'm scared.
This was the torture I meant to give you while Lila was gone, to make you feel the
glad
pain.
I came back.
Lila brought
missing me. Okay.
This is the most election of our lifetime.
apologies.
Oh my God, that was a lot of hideous cringe people on the one. We need one with what was the Pete one? It wasn't something higher. Pete Buddha.
It was his fans doing a little sign dance or something.
They were doing a dance to another one of the like hokey songs and what's her face? Liz.
I miss the cringe of Pete Buttigieg, but like,
ugh. Yeah, and that's true. The runs just said the thing in the car with the
Katy Perry,
Hillary and Chelsea. Oh my God. Al Gore doing the Macarena. What a nightmare. This is what happens when it's all just a popularity contest. I mean, of the least popular people in the world thinking that they should show you their dance moves instead of talking about material benefits that we all deserve and need as they launder our money and send it to the military establishment in Virginia. It's just vile. It is. They are just doing it in our face. They don't care. They know that homelessness is at its peak. Biden threw 15, 18 million people off of Medicaid. I mean, like, none of it matters. They're just going to rush and high hopes. Thank you.
High hopes. I have that somewhere for sure.
Oh God.
It's in
Another thing that I'll have to like edit out the song, but it will be worth it just to put it here. Yeah, they are just seeing what they can get away with. They do not care. It's all a test bubble. And honestly, yeah, I don't know. I don't want
So we have to be aware that they're going to get away with this, and we have to strategize on how to stop them, because either side wins. It doesn't matter. Democrats lose, they're going to blame the left. You know, we know the formula.
Yeah.
None of this pushes them left. So it's like we need something that disrupts the government and politics and business that is not tied to who wins the election.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be separate of that anyway.
I saw somebody writing, and I haven't read the book. What is it? How to Blow Up a Pipeline? Was that the name of the book? But somebody was writing like all these protests and sit-ins and everything are great. Nothing is going to change until we actually destroy the property that they use to curtail our civil rights. You know, like until you are doing what the Houthis are doing. Which, by the way, did you see fucking Anthony Blinken? He's such a moron. Just said something about the Houthis are the ones preventing humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza, which is hilarious because it means that they're working in concert with Israel then. The Houthis are actually helping Israel prevent humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza.
Meanwhile, Israelis are literally shooting fishermen trying to catch fish off the shore to feed 1 million starving people. They're bombing their boats. So that's where we're at.
Yeah.
As we simultaneously give I don't know how many billions.
It was like 63 billion, I think, to Israel and 20 something to.
We give all that money at the exact same time we pass a resolution about saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is officially a hate crime or whatever.
Yeah.
It has no weight to it, but it's like symbolically, the whole world is saying you're committing genocide. And we're like, here's the money. Don't say anything about it. It's criminalized to say something about it at the same time. That's the symbolism. And college kids protesting there. You guys are all kicked out of school. Can't get to your food passes to eat for the day. You're locked out of your dorms.
At like 2 a.m, she had to wait for an hour. 2 a.m, and had 15 minutes to grab her stuff. Kimmy, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
The world sees it, but God bless.
We do have to figure out. Yeah.
Everybody's still protesting and finding ways to stop bridges, stop traffic.
And people are like destroying military equipment. I mean, I cut myself. I'm preparing, it's a funny thing to have Passover start tomorrow. And I mean, there's so much normally that I don't say and have never said my whole life because I don't agree with, but I always feel like it's like Thanksgiving for Jews and we eat the food and whatever. So I was peeling an apple and I sliced my finger. Sorry, I keep snagging it.
There is a lesson.
There's a lesson. All right, are we doing the questions? Let's do it because we got to get out of here. We got to get people.
Yeah, you have. Well, let's.
All right.
You have a question, apparently.
Well, we already kind of talked about the thing about what do you say about the Trump thing. So then I was just going to go back to a fuck, marry, kill.
Oh, you have a
I
fuck,
like
marry,
those.
kill?
I just think they're funny.
All right, fair enough. Does anyone have a question? If you have a question, throw it in the chat. We'll do this.
Yeah. Fuck, marry, kill.
Let's do them all. What if I want to fuck them all? I've been locked up in this pandemic for a while.
Listen, wait till you see this list. I think you're really gonna that's gonna be your answer. Wow. Okay, you ready? Amy Schumer, Juliana Margulies, Deborah Messing.
Juliana Margulies is the one we did a worst of the week on, right?
Yeah. She was
Deborah
one who
Messing?
Don't black people, I mean, it's funny because Matt Lieb did a kind of response to that on one of the clips that we had, but we showed up for black people at, their BLM marches. God. Now they don't want to support us in a Holocaust of Palestinians.
This is such a cursed FMK right here. But without thinking too much about it, I mean, I'm killing Deborah Messing. Let's just she's got to go. She's just one of the worst.
Bad.
It's all bad. Oh my God, really?
But now you have to Yeah, that's where it all comes in. The kill and the fuck are kind of okay. Like you can kind of be like, oh, I'll just put my hand over his mouth and I don't need to listen to him. I can fuck that.
All right.
But it's the marry. The marry is the hard one.
Believe it or not, I'm marrying Amy Schumer.
I get that.
Because I think a life full of comedy, we could both hate each other. We could be one of those couples that just makes jokes about each other.
Yep.
And I'm not going to fuck her.
Yep.
We're just married. We're just married.
Yeah.
It's just a married convenience thing. But that means I don't even know what she looks like, the other one. But
I mean, I don't want to get canceled by saying, I mean, listen, I have a broad spectrum of people I could find attractive. So I think I could have gone any which way with that part of it, with the F part of all of it. But I like your reasoning for Amy Schumer. But geez,
and she,
what a mess.
She's terrible. But she used to be funny.
Plan.
She had before her evil sort of transition, which she always was probably a Zionist. But
but I agree with you. Before we knew that, I agree.
She had a funny era.
Yeah.
And I think I can convert her politics over to being less shitty.
I think you probably could.
And if I couldn't, we just hate quip each other every night. So
yeah, you just sit there in bed next to each other and text each other.
You're so ugly that blah 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 blah. Your politics
she was
are so
with
bad.
Anthony Jeselnik for a while, and
I don't know who that is.
Oh, he can be really funny too. I mean, he can be whatever. I'm sure he said things that are offensive, but what a state of things. It's a mess. All right, is that kind of it? Should we go out on another?
Okay, so what do we got?
Do we have another question?
Oh God, that's the right response. I saw this one. Does Pat smell like cat piss tonight?
That's a good question. How's Strike doing?
I mean, I hate to judge myself because I probably do, but I don't think I do. But that means I probably do because I've been on the couch.
You've just gotten so used to it.
I'm kind of immune to it at this point.
Oh God. Yeah. So maybe Amy Schumer wouldn't marry you. Audra asked if we're doing a special episode on May 1st. We should do a Labor Day.
We were talking about Labor Day. Yes.
Yeah.
Is that what day of the week is that?
I don't know. We'll have to look. But we should certainly celebrate that because that is our only hope is
vinegar
solidarity.
Oops. Yay.
All right. What do you think?
I mean, I wish somebody give Lila a fuck, marry, kill. Does somebody have a fuck,
You didn't prepare? You didn't prepare?
No, I did no preparation for this, for God's sakes. This should be patently obvious by now.
Audra says that it's a Wednesday, so we will we'll figure it out and do something good to celebrate Labor Day. So
I will have a fuck, marry, kill for you next time.
All right. All right. You guys are awesome. This was so great. Should we don't have like a one good thing to go out on, but we could just end with a Matt Lieb clip or just let people
let's play
okay.
him out. What do you want?
All right. You all are awesome. We will see you on Wednesday. Cheers. Happy Passover to those who celebrate, and keep punching up. It's a shit show.
Hey, I have a message for Black Americans posting a Palestinian flag on social media. What the hell, man? Jews have been nothing but good to you, and this is how you repay us, by calling for a ceasefire in a seemingly unrelated country 6,000 miles away. Where is the loyalty? During the civil rights movement, my grandfather's his best friend marched for your civil rights. I posted a black square. I didn't have to. I could have posted some Eggs Benedict. I had that very day, but I didn't because I'm a good friend. I read White Fragility. I read it and I said, yeah, white people, not me, do be like that. They do. We stood side by side with you fighting white supremacy only for you to turn around and be like, ceasefire. Like, whoa, that's a pretty extreme position. Like, how do you think that makes me, a guy you didn't know was Jewish until he told you, feel? Talk to your Jewish friends. Ask them about Palestine, and we will gladly educate you to the fact that you're not educated enough to talk about it. You see, Palestine is like the Confederacy. We fought a war to defeat them and their corrosive ideology, which is why when a neo-Confederate does an act of terrorism, it is justified for us to carpet bomb their entire neighborhood. It's something we do. Don't take it from me. Take it from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who once said, and I quote, Israel is good and my favorite, and they can do whatever they want. And I feel like you're betraying that memory. I know you're speaking up because silence is violence, but you know what else silence is? Golden. Silence is golden. That golden rule. Do unto others as they did unto you. It's in the Bible. We marched with you against Jim Crow. We marched with you against police brutality, and we marched with you against mass incarceration. And all we ask in return is for you to let Israel do Jim Crow, police brutality, and mass incarceration. Fair's fair, man. So you need to think.